What's going on, everybody? The World Championship is over, so we start looking past it because it's my favorite time of the year. It is format changes. It is RLCS 2025. What do we expect from it? And adding some additional things like last chance qualifiers and 1v1. So I'm going to talk about all of that and go over every little thing, trying to explain what I think some of it might mean. And yeah, let's just get right into it. It's not going to be very long. But we're just going to read out the statement provided by RL Esports on Twitter. So, RLCS 2025 returns in January, which is a plus. This year we started in February, so a month earlier as well, which is always nice. It'll be $5 million in prizing. Let's just go down to the screen. I'm not going to read every single thing, but $5 million prize pool. It's about a 15% increase, but this includes 3v3 and 1v1 now. I expect that the 1v1 prize pool will not take up a huge portion of this, but I could be wrong. I'll explain why in a second. But yes, there will be 1v1 series, as you can see there. And, oh, my mouse doesn't show up. And an online last chance qualifier, which is fantastic. And 20 teams at Worlds. So getting a little bit back to, like, I would say a mini wild card for the World Championship, which is always nice to see. So, first off, let's talk about 1v1. The 1v1 format but will live alongside the traditional 3v3 season. Now, the 1v1 format is very small. I just want to point that out now before people get, like, if they're thinking it's going to be like 3v3, it's not going to be like 3v3 at all. Split 1. This will consist of a single one tournament, open qualifier, in EU, SAM, and APAC. Cash prizes will be awarded top, 128, 64, and 32. The winner of the open qualifier in EU and SAM, so it's one tournament per region, I should say. The winner of the open qualifier in EU and SAM will progress to a 1v1 final at Major 1. So essentially, APAC, for right now, the 1v1 players will just play in one tournament and they're done, and that's it. But if you win Europe and SAM, you will go to the Major and you will battle for the World Championship spot for that split. So it'll be EU versus SAM in Split 1. Split 2, there'll be another single open qualifier. Again, only one, and that's between NA, MENA, OC, and SSA. So pretty much every region gets one of these tournaments. Again, prize at 128 in NA, 64 in MENA and OC, and 32 in SSA. So, again, at Major 2, there's only going to be two players that go, and that is the two players from NA and MENA. Because right now, they feel like those are the four best regions for 1v1, so they're going to have them battle it out. OC and SSA will not get a chance to participate in the international finals for their regions. So again, the winner of NA and MENA will battle it out, and the winner of that will go to the World Championship. So we see right here, the two winners go there. Tournament schedule will allow players to clean both 3v3 and 1v1 formats. I assume what that means is we're going to make sure like the 1v1 tournament is not at the same time as a 3v3 tournament and so on and so forth. So expect if there is NAs playing for 2 weeks in a row, if there's a week off or maybe it's that third week when they're not playing, basically. That'll be when the 1v1 is. So we'll see how that all plays out. I assume at majors, it'll probably depend on who is actually in the final. If it's like two players that are not at Worlds and they make the 1v1 final, I could definitely see that right before a grand final. If it's players that are at Worlds, I could see them moving that around to like a Friday night or something like that where it's a little bit out of the way so it won't disrupt the 3v3. So I bet it'll be something like that. It'll all depend on who actually makes it for each team. Then also, yes, if you're on the same org, you can enter and play against one another, which is kind of cool. But again, only one winner comes out, so it's not a huge deal. There's no like point system, so these organizations can't like try and rig it so they get like both their players in the top of points. Like, like in Formula 1, you're trying to like, there are times where like, oh, I need this guy to move up a little bit maybe because I'd rather him win to chase the championship, yada, yada. There'll be none of that. Let's talk about the last chance open qualifier. So that's all of 1v1. It's basically 7 open qualifiers, one for each region. You only get one. Some are in split 1, some are in split 2. I do like how they say split here. We didn't say technically split anywhere last year in our rules, and that was a big thing that was odd that we didn't call them splits. Now we're calling them splits. I see it right there. So that's always nice. So we got 7 tournaments. Then we got basically 2 semis, like a top 4 basically, and then a single final. I assume prize-in won't be incredibly high. My one concern is if they do accidentally go too high in the ones prize pool, because remember, a 3v3 prize pool is still split up between 3, maybe even 4, with the coach to some extent, and then of course the org. 1v1, it's just one player, so you don't need nearly as much money in that to make it worthwhile. But sometimes they just like to see what the number is and say it out loud, and like, you know, that's a big deal. So hopefully it's not incredibly large, but at the same time large enough where it means something for the 1v1 community and for like us to have a proper RLCS 1v1 champion. It's gonna be a lot of fun. Last chance open qualifiers. So this is for 3v3. We're going to talk now more about the 3v3 stuff. We will introduce online last chance open qualifiers between Major 2 and their RLCS World Championship. Love this. This is one thing I definitely wanted during this long break. If there is another long break, have something to fill that hole in between the tournaments. Also, it makes it so Major 2 and World Championship are not basically the same tournament, which can happen depending on who goes to what. But we had a pretty high chance that most of the top teams were going to be the same for Major 2 to the World Championship. With the long break, like, I guess it didn't matter too much. Like, everyone just wants to see good Rocket League, but it still makes it a little bit more fun because we're going to add more teams to the World Championship. The winner takes all. One team from each of the 4 regions will qualify for the Rocket League World Championship. Technically, it doesn't say if this is open or not here. I've been hearing it's open, but like completely open, but we'll see. Like maybe that'll change. But just one tournament. Winner take all for the 4 regions that'll qualify for the Rocket League World Championship. Now, does it say here? I think it said it on the graphic. Basically, it's the 4 best regions from Major 1 and Major 2 to determine who gets a last chance qualifier. So we're back to rooting for your own region, at least in Major 1 and Major 2. I don't think it technically says what that means, though. I think there's 2 ways that you can interpret that, right? There's the average position of all your teams at the World Championship. And then there's the position of your last place team at the World Championship. So the reason why these 2 are vastly different are basically like NA in Europe, right? They're going to have teams in the top 4, very likely grand finals most times, right? But the number 1 seeds for NA in Europe, it really doesn't matter as much when we're talking about like NA5 and EU5. Like, I think a better comparison is NA4 and EU4. Where do they finish? Like if it is average placement, then NA in Europe are guaranteed, right? That they're basically a virtual lock to have a last chance qualifier. I think if it's EU4 and NA4, then I don't think they're necessarily locked in. Like this time around, I believe they both would have got it. It would have been NA, Europe, Sam, and Mina. Yeah, I think Mina did slightly better than OCE. But if it was... But it was close, right? And also we saw at the World Championship, the OCE 2 seed got to 9th place as well, while the NA4 was, again, 1 and 3. So you could see where, like, if both teams do well from a region or the last place team does well, then that can move up. But the average of NA, even though they had not the greatest results, we still had what? We had a 2, we had a 7, if you average it, or I guess 7.5. 2, 7.5, and then 2, what is it? Like 13th places. I think that still averages better than a 9th. Let's see, 26, 33.5, 35.5 divided by 4. Yeah, it's slightly better than 9th. And then the 2 OC teams would get, what, 10.5? So the OC teams would technically have done worse at the World Championship than North America. But realistically, I would say that OC2 did way better than NA4, or not way better, but did better than NA4, and that they deserve their OC3 over an NA5, if that makes sense. So we'll see how they do it. I would personally, rather you base it off your last place team for each region. That keeps NA in Europe, like, they might not get it. And I understand that, like, they probably want NA in Europe to get a last chance qualifier, but for fairness sake, I think you should at least leave it up to, like, based on your last place team. Because again, you're bringing in a team that did not finish in the top 4, so why would you compare them to number 1? I would compare them to 4. But that's just me. The Rocket League World Championship 2025 will be expanded to 20 teams. The 4 teams that qualify from the Last Chance Open qualifiers will compete in person against the 4 lowest seeded qualified teams from the 4 lowest ranked regions. Again, they don't really say what ranked regions means, so we'll see how that all plays out. But you would expect this would be the APAC, the SSA, and probably OC2 more times than not. It could be NA4. It could be. Or like Sam 2 or Mina 2, just depending on how they all do, right? 4 teams will progress from this play-in stage. I'm going to call it the wild card stage because it's more fun. To play against the other top 12 teams at the RLCS World Championship. So they didn't explain this format, but very, very likely there's not much you can do with this format, especially if you're trying to fit everything into a weekend or into a week. It's going to be an 8-team double event. It's very, very likely. There's not much else you would do here. And you would then have like the best region's last chance open qualifier winner would play the worst region from majors, right? So that would very likely be APAC versus like EU or something like that. And this very likely will knock out more times than not, I would say, the APACs and the SSA. So they won't even be part of the proper World Championship, the top 16. But they'll still be at the World Championship. I don't mind this. I think this is better for making the World Championship tournament the final top 16, every match being way, way more difficult, and making it way more interesting. And if APAC and SA are good enough at that time, then obviously they can still make it in, right? So I'm a pretty pro on this all in all. They still get to go to the World Championship, but at the same time, like based on what we've seen, like to get more competitive teams in there would be, I think, better for the World Championship as a whole. But let me know in the comments below if you think otherwise and you feel like SSA and APAC might be getting kind of screwed here or something. Ranked qualifications and open qualifiers. To reward teams that perform well in open qualifiers, the top 8 teams from each event will advance to a later stage of the following open qualifier. To reward teams that perform well in open qualifiers. Okay. The top 8 teams from each event. Okay, so it's going to be if you make bracket or whatever the bracket is. We haven't heard formats yet. It looks like it's event by event basis. It's not points based, at least according to this. We'll see if that changes. But say Open Qualifier 1, K-Corp finishes 9th. They lose in Swiss or whatever it is. They would have to do the entire qualifier over, right? But if in Qualifier 2, they finish top 8, then in Qualifier 3, they will be at a later portion of the, that first weekend. Very likely the final day, right? Because there's always 3 days of open qualifier play, and then days 4, 5, and 6 are the actual tournament that we look at. They would probably be on day 3, right? This will not include the last chance qualifier or the first open qualifier of each split. Okay, so first open qualifier, again, it's not point-based. It is just top 8 from the previous event. We'll get to move forward a little bit. It's interesting. I think I would rather it be points-based, but I don't hate it. It's still something, but I think I'd rather it be points-based personally. So then at the beginning of a split, you still have those teams moving forward because most of the time it's very, very pointless for them to be playing in it. So I think personally I would rather it be points-based than just the top 8, or at least like top 4 in points. And if you want to take the next... no, that would probably complicate it. Yeah, just the top 8 in points with a tiebreaker being most recent result, right? Or something like that. But yeah, so that's how it all goes. And then you can see here the little map. I don't know how well it reads on the video, but we start in January, February, March. You got your open qualifiers. And then the major... looks like it's mid-March based on this graphic, but I don't know if that actually means anything. Then we got a transfer window. Then we begin sometime in April for Split 2. And then Major 2 looks like at the like between June and July. But this line's actually further. Oh, you can see my mouse now. But this line is further than it was in March. So this one looks more early March. This one looks late June, maybe early July. That's what it kind of looks like there. But again, that might just be the graphic. I honestly have no idea. Last chance open qualifiers are July and August, which is pretty cool. And then we got the Rocket League World Championship. I'm still interested in this last chance qualifier of like, if it is completely open, can everyone just make brand new teams? And see how that all plays out. So we'll have to see about that. But then, yeah, the World Championship and the 1v1 final will be in September. Yet again, we're doing it for a whole month based on this graphic, which obviously is not true. So that's why I don't believe the graphic necessarily. It's going to be a blast. I'm very glad we got to add some extra events in July and August. And yeah. But so once again, to reiterate, 1v1s are here, but it is small. It is small. Only one tournament per region. Only 4 teams or 4 players go to majors, and then the 2 winners go to the World Championship. We got a $5 million prize pool. It's about a 15% increase, but this includes ones. So I would assume 3v3 is still rather comparable, maybe a slight increase there. Online last chance qualifiers, fantastic, which will add 4 teams from the 4 best regions to the World Championship, which will be 20 teams at Worlds with a mini wild card or a mini play-in, whatever you want to call it, into a top 16 bracket of some sorts for the World Championship. So it's going to be fun. If you have any questions, feel free to throw them in the comments below. Probably can't answer too much based, it's mostly what we know from this document from Twitter or X. But yeah, that'll do it for me. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed the World Championship. I had a blast. We'll probably do some videos about the World Championship soon, but I wanted to do the format video first because, that's the most important to me, obviously. So thank you again. Later.